So Jesus said, because you have so little faith. Truly, I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. So what Jesus is saying here is that sometimes we put more faith in these limitations or these ceilings that we create in our minds, and we don't believe in the power of what God can do for us and what we can actually accomplish in life. And I think a good example of that, and a good example of the power of God and faith, is the life of George Foreman. So I'm going to use that as evidence for this being true. So George Foreman started out as an angry man, and he'll tell you about it here.
So very early on in your life, you win an Olympic gold medal. A few years after that, you become heavyweight champion of the world. And you've spoken about before how, even though you were having all this professional success at that time, you were pretty angry. Looking back on that now, why do you think that was?
Anger is something generally just discontent. It all started with not having enough to eat growing up, looking for more and more to eat and not having that kind of satisfaction. Then all of a sudden, you get into boxing where anger is applauded. I met Sonny Liston. He became my role model. And he was he had to be the most angry fella I'd met. He'd look right through you, scare you. And I thought, if ever I'm gonna be successful in boxing, I'm gonna have to learn how to utilize anger.
And was that a motivating force, the anger?
I don't think anger really motivates you. It's just a tool you think it's going to make you win. So, hey, I better get some.
And you said something in our interview. We sat down in 2007, this is several years back, where you said you were such a bad guy outside of the ring that people saw the best of you inside the ring. How so?
Oh, when I was in the ring, you really saw the best of me. Outside the ring, I was really some terrible fellow because I did some things to people that mostly, in the ring, I'm not ashamed of my boxing matches, but outside the ring, some of the things we did, I did, I'm ashamed of to this day.
What?
Okay, so he's talking about earlier in his career. So he grew up angry, he didn't have food, he was really, really poor, mad at the world, and he wasn't really so much a Christian. He went on this path of the dark side in the way of the world to find that happiness, and he found it through boxing and he became famous. He beat the best boxer at the time, Joe Frazier. He was on top of the world champion, had everything he wanted. But ultimately, this isn't the path to success, because what happens when you lose that? What happens when you lose a fight and you're no longer the champion? And even when he was the champion, he still had people that doubted in him, and this fueled him. He'll say in this interview how he wanted to kill someone to prove the doubters wrong. And this all stems from anger.
What are some of the things that you regret?
I regret really the way you treat people. There are a lot of people you meet and you think you're going to know them for a lifetime. Then they pass away before you even get a chance to tell them you're sorry for that side of you that they saw. And I could go on and on with stories, but like I said, there's nothing to be proud of.
Speaking to kind of your mentality as a boxer back then, you wrote about how you wanted to kill Ken Norton in your fight with him, and then when that didn't happen, you wanted to kill Muhammad Ali in your fight with him, literally kill. Why?
You get to be heavyweight champ of the world. I've defeated Joe Frazier, had one title defense, and everyone knew that I had beaten the best in Joe Frazier. No doubt about it, I had beaten the best. People had something to say about that. I said, you know what? I'm going to kill one of these fellows, then they'll shut up. And it wasn't about Ken Norton or Muhammad Ali. It was like anyone I'd met in the ring. I said, I'm going to kill one of these guys, then they'll know that I'm the best.
So he went the way of the world, and he got his happiness not from God, but from having everyone think he was the baddest, the best boxer on the planet. That's where he got his pride and his happiness. And it was to the point, even when he was on top of the world, he had everything. He had just beat the best boxer. He was the heavyweight champion. It still wasn't good enough. He still couldn't fill that hole, so he moved on to saying he wanted to kill his opponent. Well, eventually, he ended up falling to Muhammad Ali, and we'll see here. It changed his life.
Someone who not only used similar techniques, but did it better. Encouraged by Ali's endless taunting and his own coaches, Foreman threw everything he had at Ali until he had no more. The champion became so tired that in time he would come to wonder if he was drugged before the fight. Still, Foreman never doubted that he was only one punch away from shutting Ali up for good. But then, Ali capitalized on Foreman's exhaustion and sent him crashing to the canvas. With that one punch, Foreman lost everything that he had spent his life working for. For the first time, Foreman began to doubt himself and the careful persona he had tried so hard to cultivate.
So now he loses his championship, and now he goes through this past part of his life of self-reflection, where he's wondering, what can I do? Like, what's going on? How can I find happiness? So we'll keep going with here.
This was the beginning of Foreman's period of self-reflection, but at first, he would rebel. Trying to prove that he was still the man he'd always been, Foreman set up an exhibition where he took on 5 men in one.
So at first, he's still stuck with this route of pride and wanting everyone to think he was such a badass. So he set up this exhibition where he fought 5 people. And it backfires because he just looks like he's picking on all these amateur fighters.
One night. His hope was to reestablish his persona as an unstoppable monster, forcing Ali to take a rematch. Foreman ended most of the fights via knockout, but what he hadn't counted on was that the public had not lost respect for him as he thought they had. Rather than see Foreman as a fearless warrior fighting against impossible odds, which anyone who has even lightly sparred fresh opponents one after the other knows he was, the crowd instead rooted for Foreman's challengers, seeing them as brave everymen going up against an unstoppable giant. Although Foreman made his point, the night had achieved the opposite of what he hoped it would. What did win people over was an insane slugfest with Ron Lyle.
So eventually he lost again. And that's when he decided to go the route of God. He had a religious experience, and he started a ministry.
Seek to reestablish his reputation. Instead, he embraced his loss. Foreman would soon explain to his friends that he had had a religious experience after the fight, that he had come close to death and had realized the fragility of life. Foreman took a hard look at what really mattered to him. He quit boxing immediately, eventually becoming a minister. After seeing the impact that his brother Roy was having teaching kids boxing, Foreman opened a youth center to help keep underprivileged kids out of trouble. But after someone he trusted stole a good portion of his money, something surprisingly common in the world of boxing and entertainment, Foreman realized he no longer had the funds necessary to keep helping his community. That was when Foreman made the fateful decision to return to boxing 10 years after he had lost his title to Ali. What's more, he vowed to once again become heavyweight champion.
You see there, they're also saying about how someone close to him stole his money. That's what happens to a lot of these wealthy people or famous people. They'll have all these snakes around them that'll leech off them, and it's the way of the world. Like, that's why the path to Satan, he's a liar. He'll deceive you. He'll make you think money will make you happy, but then he'll bankrupt your he'll bankrupt the economy, right? And all of a sudden the money's devalued and worth nothing. Like, these are tricks of Satan, and it's not money. It's not the path to happiness at all. It's only through God. Is all this crap that the world offers you? It's just a fiction. It's a lie. It's a deception. And so the point of this video here is the saying that if you have faith in God, you can move mountains. So what we see with Foreman is he had this religious experience. He became a minister, and he let go of his anger. And we'll show that here at the end of this interview.
You've been known as the hardest puncher ever. You said that some punches, and just speaking in general terms, you said some punches are so ferocious that they don't hurt. They actually will interrupt communication between the tower and the ground, as you put it. Explain what you mean.
There was two boxers I faced in my career. They hit so hard it didn't hurt. It was Ron Lyle the first time. I remember thinking, I'm not hurt, why am I on the floor? And he knocked me down again. If only it had hurt, I would not have gotten up. It was like you are no longer the same person. You see your legs wiggle, and you're not in control of yourself. Once again, Jerry Cooney hit me with a left hook way back into my second career, and I felt it's gonna happen again. And I decided to get that fight over that time.
You ever hit somebody similarly hard where you could see that happen to them? My punching power was the first time around was so vicious that the second time around I wouldn't even throw those kind of punches anymore. And why was that?
Because the first time around, as I told you, I'm gonna kill one of these guys. I decided the second time around, I'm not gonna kill anyone. This is a profession, and there was never a shot in anger.
See, he overcame his anger, and through his belief in God and his faith, he was able to accomplish a miracle. Like Jesus said, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. And he became the heavyweight champion at age 45, when no one thought he was a joke. Everyone thought it was a joke. No one believed he had any chance whatsoever. He was probably the only person in the world who believed in himself.
Us. You've been great. You've inspired us. You've entertained us. But now, please, isn't it time to go back to the old fishing hole before you seriously get hurt?
A few days after Michael Moorer beat Evander Holyfield, I got a call from George. And I said, George, you can't kid me. You want to fight Michael Moorer. And he said, more than anything else in the world.
When Michael Moorer defeated Holyfield to become the new champion, George Foreman, at age 45, would get one final shot.
I knew what Teddy told me, like, he's a big con. And I just look at him like,
go get me a sandwich and sit down.
Man, you're so fake.
Featuring the clown king of the sport, the larger-than-life George Foreman.
Well, there are a lot of skeptics out there who think that George now is more King Khan than King Kong. But George hasn't earned this championship shot as a fighter. He hasn't fought in a year and a half, and on that inauspicious occasion, he lost to Tommy Morrison.
With the fighter he's fighting, he's going to have to punch and try to club him and just keep beating him. But I don't think that's going to happen.
So you see no chance that George can win the fight?
Very little.
Very little.
Foreman looked to become the oldest heavyweight champion in boxing history. But despite the optimism of the crowd, few gave Foreman more than a puncher's chance.
Middle-aged men don't knock out 25-year-old heavyweight champions.
He would be the oldest to win the heavyweight title by a huge margin over Walcott, who was 37 when he beat Ezzard Charles.
I always thought if the George Foreman from the Rumble in the Jungle had the brain of the George Foreman who fought Michael Moorer, that's the greatest fighter ever.
Let's get ready to rumble!
I'm the boss man in here. Take your hands to lunch.
George, how are you going to find him? You haven't fought in a long time. he moves in there. He goes at a different angle. He's a southpaw. He wouldn't stand still for Holyfield. Why would he stand still for you? And George said, you watch, somewhere late in the fight, he's going to come stand in front of
And
him.
in the press, the feeling was that Michael would be too sharp, too fast, too young, and Big George too slow and too big and too old. This colossus of heavyweight boxing, a man with a foot in several decades. Good people over the last 2 or 3 months think this fight shouldn't take place, think that George is putting himself in danger of real and serious injury.
The shadow of Ali loomed large over the career and legacy of Foreman.
The vibrations are against him, the planets are against him, and already he lost the first 5 rounds.
Michael Moore will go back to Teddy Atlas. Big George will lumber back slightly slower.
The hardest part of the fight is over. Now you know it's not make-believe anymore.
Teddy Atlas telling him
our sparring partners were better.
The hardest part of the fight is over. You know what he's made of. Our sparring partners were better. We're round 8. Foreman's trailing, losing, but not out of the fight.
Get all you got, George.
That's a fantastic short left cross from Moore, wrong-footed, and sent Foreman stumbling.
George Foreman had never openly sought specific redemption for his demise against Ali and Zaire, but it's revealing that he chose to wear the same trunks on this night that he had worn in the jungle 20 years before.
George Foreman in the shorts he wore that night in Zaire to Rumble in the Jungle when he lost his world heavyweight title.
I told you, I'm the champion of the world.
But he always saw the ghost of Muhammad Ali. And
Everybody has felt all along that you're always chasing the ghost of Ali. Does this make you catch that ghost?
I'm the greatest. You know having the business in the ring with me.
That's it! It's a short right hand! There is no way he's going to knock from that!
It happened. It happened. I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
Chasing the ghost of Ali. Does this make you catch that ghost?
Yeah, I've exercised the ghost once and forever. Sure.
20 years after being beaten by Ali, Big George Foreman recaptured the heavyweight championship, the oldest champion in the history